Hey friends, welcome to the Angie Ambrosetti Show. Let her out to play. I'm Angie, your host, a teenage mom turned multi-six-figure earner, married to the same man for nearly 40 years. I'm a homeschooling mom of 7 and totally unqualified, at least on paper, but wildly called by God. Remember, He doesn't call the qualified, He qualifies the called. Here, we are going to talk about it all: healing from the hard stuff, building a business with heart, raising a big family, walking in faith, and finally breaking free from the lies that said we weren't enough. So if you're ready to stop playing small, shake off the doubt and the shame, and step fully into who you were created to be, girl, you are in the right place. Let's go. Friends, here we are again. I'm just coming to you today because I want to bring you a bonus episode. Like, we are just getting started with this, but here is what happened. On Tuesday, you guys heard the recording from my first episode where I had a guest on. It happened to be my high school best friend. And after a couple weeks that we did the recording, she came back and she's like, you know what? I think I have a few more things to say. I feel like there were some things that I maybe was holding back on, and I really feel like there's someone out there who needs to hear a little bit of the story. So here we are. I'm like, hey, let's just hop back on. Let's do a bonus episode and let's see who needs to hear what Melissa Masters has to say this go around. So, welcome back, my friend.
Hi, Angie. Thanks for having me back. I'm so glad to be here.
You are so welcome. I was thrilled when you said, hey, let's do this again, because I'm always game for it. So we just decided we're going to hop on. And so, friend, I want you to just recap a little bit. I want you to take us back because maybe someone's listening today and they didn't hear the episode that was launched on July 1st. So I want you to just give the listeners a little piece of what you shared with us, and then we'll just pick it up from there. How's that sound?
Okay, that sounds great. So, the last episode, we talked a little bit about me being a teenage mom, um, being scared and nervous and a little excited, and but we talked about the depression and the anxiety that came with that, and I just felt like um, we didn't really dig very deep on that, and there might be something that needed to be talked about there a little bit. So
Yeah.
here we are.
So here we are. So tell us, like, you did discuss with us a little bit about the fact you were 18 when you got pregnant.
Right.
And did you, let's see, did you deliver her? Were you 18 when you delivered?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So 18 and about 6 weeks in, tell us what was happening. Tell us what was happening when your baby was about 6 weeks old. What were you feeling? What were you going through? What were the emotions that were happening about that time?
I was really depressed. I was feeling very overwhelmed, very anxious, pretty worthless, scared. Like, what in the world am I doing here? Can I really do this? Can I be a good mother to this child? I went pretty dark for a while.
Mm.
I was in a lot of pain emotionally. It was just it was a really dark place. I had got to the point where I just decided that my daughter would probably be better off without me.
Mm. What was making you feel that way, my friend?
I don't know, like I just think it was fear of not knowing how I was going to be able to be a good parent to her and wanting more for her.
Yeah.
And it was depression, whether it be like maybe the years later we had a lot of depression in our family and a lot of anxiety. A lot of people in our family had dealt with those things, so I didn't know a lot about postpartum. We didn't talk about it back then. I did learn about it years later and maybe thought that that's what I had been dealing with back then. I did make a decision to swallow a bottle of pills, and when she was about 6 weeks old. Yeah. So I just thought I'd be better off and she would be better off and she would have a better life. So that's where I was at.
Okay, so that's heavy, and I can imagine that even now, talking about that is difficult. I see the emotion coming up, and I know that was a very, very difficult and dark time, like you said. And so you decided you were going to take some pills. And
Yeah.
what happened? You took a bottle of pills. What do you remember
I
from that?
quickly realized, that I had taken these pills and I was alone with my daughter, and I did not want child services to get involved and take my daughter. So I called my dad and I told him what I'd done. Of course, he rushed over and got me to the hospital. And
Hmm.
I have vague memories. I remember getting my stomach pumped. It was horrible. I remember my friends coming to the hospital and asking me, why I would do something like that. Like nobody understood. I had people in my family who didn't speak to me because they thought it was so selfish, and
Mm,
it wasn't selfish. I was just in such a place of pain. I didn't know anywhere else to turn. And I feel like a lot of people are in that place of pain and
mm,
it's not talked about. People don't want to, their families hide things like this when they happen. Um, like you're supposed to be ashamed of it and not talk about it. And that doesn't help anybody else that might be struggling with these kind of feelings.
yeah. Well, isn't it safe to say that back in the day, like we're talking 30 something years ago, there were
Yeah,
a lot of things that we weren't permitted to talk about,
absolutely. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so one of the things about this podcast is let her out to play. So it's a play on words, right? It's for me, for you, for so many others, it's stop playing half court.
Yeah.
It's literally go all in, be vulnerable, share the story because you might, well, there's no might. I guarantee this podcast, this episode is going to touch the heart of someone listening that maybe is in that place right now, or maybe they've been in that place, or maybe they know someone who's in that place or been in that place, and it's going to help them find the freedom that they need in it and know that it's not selfish because depression, anxiety, those dark spaces, they are real and there's definitely a turning point. There's help that can be um, found. And by you speaking up and sharing that, like, friend, you just don't know who that's going to impact. And you said that there have been um, family members that you've known who have battled the same type of thing. Tell us a little bit about that.
We've lost family members to suicide. We've had family members who have made attempts. By the grace of God, they're still with us, as am I. So it's something that a lot of people in my family have dealt with, is the depression and the anxiety. So, and I have dealt with it most of my life. It's very real. It's very serious, and I feel like people are so embarrassed to talk about it and so ashamed to talk about it. And things like that, like, it changed my outlook on things when I was given a second chance. And I just don't want anyone to sit in the dark and feel like they're afraid to speak out if they're in trouble, you know.
Right. Well, because really the moment wasn't about weakness, right?
No.
It was just about the deep pain and then not knowing
Yeah.
who to ask for help or how to ask for help. Because sometimes that seems like weakness in itself to ask
Right.
for help.
Right. When people hide things like that or are told to not talk about it, like that's why they're afraid to ask for help.
Mm,
And nobody should be afraid to ask for help.
yeah. So, what do you feel like was the turning point? So, okay, wait a minute. Let me go back just a little bit.
Okay.
So, she was 6 weeks old.
Yeah.
You were in the hospital for a couple of weeks
Right.
after that.
Right.
Uh, so, she would have been a couple months old. What happened after you got out?
Well, I stayed in therapy. I ended up getting pregnant with my son shortly after. I think she was 5 months old. I was determined at that point to just be a fantastic mom and provide the best life that I could for her.
Mhm.
So I mean, there were still mistakes made over the years, but it did change my outlook on some things. I still suffered from depression and anxiety, but I was able to manage it better, through life. And but it takes a lot of work, a lot of
Mm-hmm.
prayer, a lot of hard work. Um, the Lord definitely has guided me through quite a bit of this anxiety, depression that I still deal with as an adult now.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I have tools, and I work hard to, to keep it at bay.
Yeah.
So
So I know in some of our conversation, you said definitely the turning point was basically surrendering to the Lord and just
absolutely.
and allowing him to divinely work in your life, which I think is so beautiful. And you actually said to me, like, I just don't want to waste the second opportunity, the second chance that I have because your life was spared. It could have been a different outcome.
Absolutely, it could have. I've seen
Yeah.
the different outcomes and what it does to families. And
Hmm.
looking back today, I can't imagine what my children's life would be like without me in it.
Yeah.
So,
And now you have two beautiful granddaughters.
yeah,
So
yeah,
definitely they need you as much
yeah,
as your daughter and your son, right?
absolutely.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
what would you tell our listeners here today if you could share with them a little bit about because, like we're talking about teenage pregnancy, we're talking about postpartum, we're talking about these things, but also the fact that depression not only hits, teenage moms or moms in general or postpartum moms, but it can hit the entire family. So, what
Yeah.
would you say to that listener out there today that might be dealing with that or know someone who is?
Well, first of all, there's no shame in asking for help. And it's not any, you're not being weak. We're scared. We don't know what to do. Sometimes we don't know who to ask for help. Reach
Mhm.
out. We can put you in contact with someone that can provide help if needed, if you have no one to ask.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's okay because I think there's a majority of us that suffer from these things.
Mhm.
It's like a hidden little corner of the world that people still to this day are ashamed to talk about. And
Right.
there's just no reason for that. And surrender to the Lord because he will walk you through it step by step.
Absolutely. He's
Yeah.
so amazing in that way. Well, and so, we know that depression doesn't always look like anything, right?
No,
Like
no,
you said yourself, like I looked like the girl that was holding it all together, like nobody really knew. Do you feel like your parents knew anything that was going on there?
no. I don't feel like anybody knew, because it was such a thing that you want to hide. You don't
Mhm.
want people. I've learned over the years, I've hid it for years. I don't always talk about it, but I do talk about it more freely now,
Mhm.
especially if I meet someone that I can see is suffering from anxiety and depression, to make them feel comfortable to talk about it because it's just scary.
Yeah.
You don't know, people are going to judge you, but you know what? People are going to judge you anyways. So you have to worry about your life, and we're really all only judged by the Lord. That's the only judgment that matters. So,
Mhm. Well, because like you said, people are going to judge you anyway. So do you
right.
might as well do what you know is the right thing to do and not worry about what other people's opinions are.
Yeah.
Something
Yeah.
I carried for far too long in my life.
Me too, as well,
Yeah.
always.
And so
So,
you talked a little bit about your healing journey. Can you give us a little insight about what that healing journey has looked like for you?
yeah, I have been healing out loud lately, working with you as my life coach, which has been amazing. Working through the program. Of course, again, surrendering to the Lord with all of this.
Mhm.
It's been amazing. So I want to share all of these stories with people to make connection, not, to feel for sympathy by any means, because I
Mhm.
want people to know that they can talk about it too. And it's okay. And that there's support systems here and people want to help you. And the healing's the best part.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So, uh, when you were talking about, I think we talked about this a little bit more in your first episode, but you were battling, a lot of things from childhood and just, do you feel like that really came into play that increased the anxiety, the depression, just
Yeah.
different things in your life?
Yes, I feel like being a teenage mom was already hard on its own, and bringing childhood trauma in with that, it was just made it that much harder. I mean, I was still a kid. I'm trying to figure out my own trauma and issues as when I'm excited still to be a mother, but it was very confusing and conflicting, the two
Mhm,
different feelings of that. And a lot of worthlessness came along with that. And that's, where I think I came to the decision that my daughter might be better off without me.
mhm. Well, I would say that you are showing up big time right now, my friend, and I'm so proud of you.
Oh, thank
And
you.
speaking your truth literally gives you strength.
Absolutely. It makes you
Mhm.
so much
Yeah.
stronger to speak your truth.
And I think also asking for help, it like we talked about earlier, like that doesn't show weakness. It literally shows strength
Absolutely.
because
It's
you're
not
willing,
easy. But
right?
if you take that first step, it gets easier every time. And it's
Mhm.
so worth it. It really is.
Yeah. So what would you say became your reason to live? Because you said at the beginning of our show today that you felt like your daughter would be better off, everyone would be better off, but you've had like time to think those things through as you went through the process of taking the pills, trying to commit suicide, realizing that was not your best yes, and going through therapy and then getting out, getting, back with your daughter at, well, I
Yeah.
think you said she would have been about 8 weeks old at that time.
Yeah. Well, I missed her terribly, and the therapy was great. Of course, I needed that break, I think, and some guidance. But I had decided that, my daughter was going to be my reason to keep going. And through the therapy, the continued therapy and having another child, I did eventually have to learn that I was worth it, that I was worth being here and being alive
Yes.
and being a great mom, and that these were my two most precious gifts given to me by the Lord.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, I mean,
Yeah. So how soon after that did you have your little miracle?
uh, he's 14 months younger than his sister. So it was pretty quick. It was
Okay.
almost like having twins. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That
You
was a
guys were
whole new set of challenges all on its own.
you guys
Yeah.
were all kind of growing up together, right?
Absolutely, we were.
Yeah.
We were a
Yeah.
little rat pack for sure.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Well,
and we're
friend,
still fun and together like that. We still grow and are very close, and
yeah. And that's amazing. So if you had one last thing to leave with our listeners today, what would that message be?
spend a little time loving yourself. And if you are in a dark place and you are struggling with anything, please reach out to someone, because you are worth it. And your story is not over by far. The Lord has so much planned for you. Um, he has turned my pain into purpose, and this is why I share my story. And I hope it touches someone's heart and you're able to ask for help.
That's awesome. Well, friends, thank you so much for tuning in again today. And if I just want to say, if you're in that place, you are not alone. There are others out there who have been where you are. Maybe they are where you are, and you just need a little bit of help. I'm going to put Melissa's contact information in the show notes. So if you want a safe place to talk to someone, just get some encouragement, just know that you are not alone and your story isn't over. And like Melissa said, you are worth it. There's no shame in struggling, and there's no shame in asking for help. And I just love that Melissa said, I'm sharing my story today, not for sympathy, but 100% for connection, because healing begins when we stop hiding. That was a direct quote from her, and I love that. So, friends, I'm going to put her information in the show notes. If you would like to reach out, please do so. Thank you for tuning in to us today. And Melissa, thank you so much from the bottom of my heart to be willing to hop back on here and to share a little bit more vulnerability about what you've been through, because I know that this is going to be working and touching and tugging on someone else's heart and someone else's story. And it is going to be for the benefit of all. So thank you so much, my friend.
Well, Angie, thank you for, having the platform for all of us to share our stories with everyone. So we appreciate it. Thank you so
You're
much.
so welcome. All right, friends, if you connected with this podcast today in any sense, or you know someone who this could impact, it could help, it might give them a bit of encouragement, please be sure to download, to share, to review this podcast. Leave your feedback, hit that share button, and share it with someone who needs to hear it today. And we'll talk to you guys soon on our next episode. Bye-bye. That's it for today, friends. Thanks for tuning in with me today. I hope today's episode stirred your soul, sparked your faith, and reminded you that your story is far from over. Keep walking in freedom, keep showing up bold, and never forget, God doesn't call the qualified, He qualifies the called. Be sure to leave a review, subscribe, or share this podcast with a friend who needs to hear it as well. Until next time, keep letting her out to play, because the world needs your fire.